When you've got so many things to do, how do you decide what you should actually do? That's the question that is coming up today on the summer series episode of the Everyday VOpreneur Podcast. I'm giving voice actors an opportunity to come on the show, ask their most pressing question, and hopefully give them some good advice that they can move forward. The thought process being, if they're thinking about it, chances are somebody else who's watching and listening is thinking about it too. So welcome to the show, Robert Starling. Tell me what your question is and how can I help you?
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me on the show today. I very much appreciate it because this is a big question for me. So I've had my own business for 46 years right now. So I've had other businesses and I'm very used to balancing, 2 or 3 commercials at a time and pre-production, post-production, and all the things that go with that, and dealing with staff and even marketing people when I had them. But man, voiceover is super different. And I've ran a lot of businesses, but this it's definitely tough. So it's like there's so many moving parts, right?
Yep.
And when I first looked at this, even though I'd been hiring voice actors for 25 or 30 years, I didn't really understand how the management and all the components of this were so tricky. So like every day, I've got these priorities other than running Starling Productions, right? So there's auditions, there's coaching, there's online coaching, there's workshops, there's working on SEO, there's marketing stuff and website stuff and social media and watching training content, watching the Playbook. And, in the Playbook yesterday, I'm going, that's wrong on my website. I've got to go in and fix that. And so the next 4 hours, I'm falling down that rabbit hole of fixing the benefits and the SEO on my website. So for me, I'm sort of one trick pony. I'm definitely not a multitasker. I mean, when I focus on something, I have to focus on that for the moment. Unlike my wife, she could do 50 things at once. I could do one thing and I got to do it well, right? So that slows me down, I think. And I'm also guilty of one of the things you mentioned in the Playbook is that, I want to get everything right before I start it. And it's not like I haven't started marketing or anything, but I just think I'm pulled in 1,000 directions. So My question is when you're building a VO business and everything seems critical, like how do you recommend prioritizing what to tackle first? How do we decide like what deserves our time today, right now, and without spinning our wheels and me like diving down that rabbit hole? And, it's like barbecue. I'm happy to dive down the rabbit hole, right?
What is the saying? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Indeed. And that has always been my killer forever.
And the flip of that is done is better than perfect. Right. And so I do understand. Are you a Virgo by any chance? Because you sound kind of like a Virgo.
No, but I had dated some Virgos. I know exactly what you're talking about. I am a Capricorn, so we're almost the same, right?
I'm a Virgo, so that's why I was like, man, you sound like a Virgo. You sound almost like me. There are a lot of things that have to get done, obviously, and we want everything to be done right, and we want everything to be done well, and we want to put our best foot forward. But I also think that can become a crutch. Or it can become an excuse where we generate a failure to launch scenario because there's always going to be something else that has to get fixed. There's always going to be something else that can be done better. And part of that is going to come from the fact that you're always learning something new, right? Like I'm still going back and making tweaks to websites, social media strategy, videos, podcasts, you name it. I'm constantly evolving my process and what all that stuff looks like because I'm always learning something new that's going to make it a little bit better. And if I was just waiting until I felt like I had all the answers, I would certainly never get anything done. And so I think that's one thing that we have to be very cautious of. And it's something that I hear all the time. We want to launch.
I'm not the only one.
Not even close. This is look, there are 2 rules for the VOpreneur. Rule number 1 is don't overthink it.
Right.
And rule number 2 is do the thing. And where do you think those 2 rules came from?
You know what? I think they came from you, I suspect, but I should probably just go work at the car wash or something or get a job at FedEx and just deliver packages all day.
those rules are a byproduct of thousands of coaching sessions and recognizing that this is a serious problem for voice actors across the board. So first and foremost is just like, you got to give yourself permission to get out there. And as you do, so I think there's two things. As you do the thing, you will build efficiencies, right? The more that you do something, the easier that it becomes. Your first auditions probably take you an hour to submit, but after your 100th audition, they might only take 10 minutes to submit because you're building processes, you're getting better, you're getting more efficient.
Well, I'm probably 300 auditions in, maybe 400 auditions in, and I'm still trying to get it down under 10 minutes. It just depends, right?
And I'm not saying you should be rushing all of them either, but I'm sure that the auditions that you're submitting today are probably going more quickly than the auditions you were submitting
Absolutely.
at the very beginning. And
Yeah.
you're probably getting a little bit better at your editing, and you're learning little tips and tricks and all that sort of stuff. And so as you get your reps in, I think that stuff leads to being a little bit more efficient, which can certainly help with on the productivity side. The other thing I would say is everything feels like a priority, but not everything is an equal priority. And so part of what we have to do is we have to sit down and look at what is actually a priority. Like, if you had to take those things that you've got to do and rank them numerically from 1 through 10, when you force yourself through an exercise like that, you quickly start to realize, okay, this is a 1 and this is a 10. And if the 10 doesn't get done today, that's going to be okay as long as the 1, 2, and 3 get done today type thing. I am a fan of time blocking. That is something that I have done for years. I don't get to do it as much as I would like now, just because my schedule is a little bit more unpredictable. But I definitely am on board with you. Like you said, like when I sit down, I need to be able to focus on the thing and do the thing. And I'm totally in alignment with that. Case in point, after this interview today, I am heading out of the house for a couple hours. I already told my wife I'm taking my laptop, heading out for a couple hours. I'm teaching a class tonight. And I just need to be able to sit down someplace quiet without distraction and just put together my notes, finalize what I want to do, and be able to teach that class. That is time blocking for me. I've had that blocked out in my schedule for a couple of weeks, knowing that I was going to be teaching today. And so that's part of how my brain works. At the same time, you could just as easily sit down and create a time block for social media and batch it out. You could sit down in an hour or two and come up with 2 or 3 weeks worth of posts, and then not have to worry about that particular thing again in your schedule, and for a couple of weeks at least, right? And so I think there's things like that you can do, little tips and tricks for, how do I time block, but how do I batch? How do I build in those sorts of efficiencies? Can any of this be done in bulk?
LinkedIn, for instance, I decided in February, because I've never cared for the LinkedIn platform or interface so much, but the reality is I need to be there. And so in February, I said, all right, I'm going to commit to 20 weeks, 2 posts a week.
Yep.
And I'm in about week 14 right now. And I mean, you can certainly see on my, impressions and engagements, that's all changed. But I'm still just kind of posting 2 or 3 days ahead of time, because sometimes I have something that pops up and it's like, oh, well, this is more interesting.
Yep.
I don't think it's like a fear of failure sort of thing for me. It's just like, I'm also running a whole other company that's been going on for 46 years. So what I've tried to do, and I need to know more about your blocks. So what I've tried to do is do that Stephen Covey thing that, I studied for years: important and urgent, important, non-urgent, not important, but urgent, and, throw it in the trash. But I swear I can go through my list right now and everything seems important and urgent. And so when I'm sending out my direct marketing pieces and sending people to the little Robert Starling VO website that I have, I'm going like, oh my gosh, and I know about benefit versus features. I mean, we have to work with that for our clients, but I totally missed it, in the website that I put up, because I was quick to put it up. So,
Yep.
And I found that I'm spending like boatloads of time doing, we'll just say 10 voices.com auditions a day.
Sure.
And those aren't very fruitful. Lots of shortlisting, but it's just, it feels like I'm doing so much. And then guys like you or different people point out that you need to build your own business. You need to build your own set of names and your own things. And so, we have 1,600 clients I've done business with in the last 15 or 20 years. And so, trying to engage with them, and it's just, there's a lot going on. I'm not whining, but I'm putting in 10 or 12 hours a day on the voiceover end of the business, unless I've got something in production, right, that I have to deal with at the moment.
So I think there's a couple of things based on what you're telling me. I think there's a couple of things we can lean into. With LinkedIn in particular, I'm thinking, okay, you said you're trying to do 2 posts a week. You committed to doing it for 20 weeks. You're at 14 weeks, give or take. So you've got 25, 26, 27 posts, depending on where you're at in your 14-week schedule at this point. So you've got a bunch of posts already under your belt. I definitely agree that there are moments when something comes up in the moment, something that's relevant, something that feels like I could talk about this today. And it's great when that happens. But there are also a lot of times where there is nothing in the moment and you're not really sure what to talk about. And then you spend an hour trying to think of something to come up with, or you just don't do anything at all.
No, I pre-wrote 40 of them. I mean, I've got them all like ready, but then I'm going, oh, well, Elton John was in the news this week, so I'll post that interview I did with Elton John.
Yep. So what I think you could do, though, because you've got posts under your belt now, go back through those posts and look at what were your best performing posts. Pick of the 20 or 30 that you've got up, pick 5 or 10 that were the best performing posts, and then try to discern from that what was the theme or themes.
Mostly celebrities. So
these things leaned into whatever. Yeah. So it was celebrities, but it's people that you've worked with.
Right. Behind the scenes shots of
behind the scenes
with me and celebrities. And those are super popular. I mean, it's like.
So, but that's good information to have, because now if you wanted to sit down and batch, okay, these celebrity behind the scenes, these ones do really well. Let me just think about all those stories and sit down and batch a bunch of those out. And so that is building an efficiency, because you don't have to think as hard about what to come up with. Yeah, you've still got to write the post or find the image or find the video clip or whatever. But you don't have to think about it as much, because you already know this is a theme that I'm going to lean into. So when you look at those top performing themes and think, okay, how can I sit down and make 10 or 20 more posts on those and get them batched out? That way you've got a bunch of posts in the can. So you always have something. Now, if something comes up on Thursday and you're like, man, I really want to post about this today, great. So you saved one of those posts that you have. That can go for another day when there's nothing to talk about. But give yourself permission to batch those out and use those. And sometimes you're not going to be able to post that thing or that came up in the moment or whatever, but we're trying to reduce the workload a little bit.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. The actual like piecemeal handling of it.
Yes.
And so I wrote the 40 posts up front, but then I've been piecemealing like 1 or 2 at a time up for the week, and I get it. So that's some efficiency there.
That's a time block, maybe a 1 or 2 hour time block in your calendar once a month, where you sit down and batch out the next 30 days, batch out the next 30 days. Right. And you can do that when you have some themes that you can lean into, because you already have a really good idea of what you're looking for, the type of post that you're writing. On the online casting side, you said that your auditions haven't been particularly fruitful, but you've been getting a bunch of shortlists. So the very first thing that I would be looking at is, are there any themes or commonalities for the shortlists? Where are those shortlists coming from? Are they coming from a particular genre? I'm consistently getting shortlisted for commercial. I'm consistently getting shortlisted for whatever. Or is it coming from a particular set of directions? I seem to consistently get shortlisted for this type of read or this style of voice or whatever. And maybe there's going to be a couple in there, but the point is you're going to be able to sit down and see, okay, my shortlist consistently seem to be coming from this type of genre or this type of read. So you prioritize those. And then all that other stuff doesn't need to be a priority, right? You don't have to submit to every audition. That's going to give you back some time to work on some of the other things, right? Because submitting the audition is great. It gives us that instant gratification of, I just submitted for a job today or whatever. But if you're submitting 10 of these things a day and you're not booking any of them and you're only getting shortlisted for 3 or 4 of them, we're not actually being efficient. I would rather forget about the ones that I wasn't getting shortlisted for, focus on the ones that I am getting shortlisted for, and gain back an hour in my day, 5 days a week, that's 5 extra hours that I can devote towards my own marketing efforts or one of those other
I
things.
haven't implemented that, but I did go back a few weeks ago and I said, okay, look at everything I'd been shortlisted for. And I was really surprised. There were like 2 animations, and I'm like, really? I got shortlisted for that. But a lot of it's, we can talk about this in our private coaching session when we do it. But I'd like to know more about your time blocks. How do you do your time blocks? I mean, it's just, okay, you block time, duh. But I mean, how do you prioritize that?
That's part of it, right? It's trying to make sure that when I'm blocking out time, I'm doing it in the most efficient way. So if I'm going to block an hour for online casting, for example, I want to make sure that I'm taking that hour to submit the best possible matched auditions for me that I have the highest probability of booking. That way, that hour is maximized. I might not submit the same quantity of auditions that I could submit otherwise, but I'm submitting better, more strategic auditions, and then I'm off the platform. Same thing when I'm doing LinkedIn. I have a time block. I go on, I do my LinkedIn stuff. When the time is up, I get off LinkedIn, I move on, and I do the next thing. I think that's part of it too, is when you create those time blocks, it's actually protecting the time blocks. It's not allowing yourself to fall down the rabbit hole of 2 hours later. Yeah, the Pomodoro timer, I'm telling you, those things are magic.
No, it is magic. But you know how I use it? I flip it over, and when 10 minutes is up, I say, oh, I didn't quite get done in 10 minutes. I need 10 more minutes.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of it, but
I know. But what am I going to do? Just not send that email? But anyway, it's a good problem to have, right?
Yep.
And I enjoy doing this. I enjoy the challenge of it, but it is hard. And for people that are coming into this, they have no production background or they have no entrepreneurial or business background.
Working for yourself is really hard. A lot of people do not understand how hard it is to work for yourself because you are the one that you answer to, and we're not used to that environment, right? We are used to being the employee, and we are used to answering somebody else. Somebody else gives us our priority list. Somebody else tells us what we have to get done today. Somebody else is assessing whether or not we've done the right things, and that's
that
not
sounds
the way
like
it
my
is.
wife.
Yeah, well, there's some of us have that going on too, but on the coaching side, you mentioned that you're spending a lot of time on coaching and training, and obviously that is something that you're front loading that, right? Training never stops, but you don't need to do it to the same scale as you grow in your business, right? You want to make sure that you're always learning, always picking up something new, but you're not specifically attending classes or coaching every single week, or I think most are not doing it at that scale.
I am not at this point because just something had to budge in the schedule. I've even backed off on the voices.com auditions. I cut the price point down, but I haven't really thought about. I've itemized the genres or calculated the genres, but I haven't implemented that as like, oh, well, why am I bothering with this? Because I only have one,
when I was doing online casting, I actually turned off some of the genres. I just clicked them right off so that I didn't even get the auditions. Because if I didn't get the auditions, then I don't need to sit down and look at it. I don't need to think about whether or not I should submit for it or whether or not it's a good match, right? So I save time just by doing that, just by don't even get them delivered into your inbox, and then you don't even know. On the coaching side, I think one of the things that you could look at is just prioritizing certain things. You can drink from the fire hose on coaching, and in voiceover there's 100 different genres that you can pursue, right? Yeah, like there's so many different genres to pursue. There's so many different ways that you can come at it, and I do think that there's something to be said for it. Let's pick 1 or 2 genres, really get into those genres, start making money in those genres, and then once I've got that going, I don't need the coaching and the training in that genre anymore. So the time that I free up by not having to do the coaching and training in that genre, now I can think about adding another genre into the mix, do a little bit of coaching in another one. And ideally, you're making some money, which is going to pay for it as well. So it's not just all going on the credit card.
I think, Starling Productions is funding the business so far.
I think there's just mandatory things for me anyway. There was mandatory things when I was growing my business. I had to have a 2-hour block in my day to do marketing. I just prioritized that. And that might have meant that I spent a little bit less time on online casting. It might have meant that I submitted a few less auditions on online casting, but I was thinking long-term. right? Those emails that I was sending today are the jobs that I'm going to be booking a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. The best time to plant a tree, right? It was yesterday. It was 20 years ago, right? Like
Right.
I don't want to wait. I don't want to spend a year or two on online casting and then decide, man, I should probably do my own marketing. And now those jobs are another year away and that's 3 years gone, right? So I made a priority of blocking that out in my calendar. That was non-negotiable for me. That was priority number one. Everything else could wait. I didn't need to submit auditions in that 2-hour window. I didn't need to check my email in that 2-hour window. I didn't need to go on Facebook in that 2-hour window. I just needed to send some marketing emails, make some connections, spend some time in my CRM, whatever it was, prioritize those types of things. Everything else I was building around that. I'm looking at, how do I batch out my social media? How do I batch out my podcast? How do I batch out, you know, those repetitive tasks that still need to get done, but I can't spend an hour every day sitting around thinking about what to post on LinkedIn or what to post on Instagram today or whatever. And so it's sitting down and thinking through some of those things. If I can come up with content pillars that I can lean into, and then I can say, okay, I'm going to make posts about this subject, and this subject. Now I can sit down for a couple hours. I can batch out a whole bunch of posts on this subject, and this subject. And then I can schedule that out for a month in advance. And now I have a month that I don't need to think about doing that
Yeah, I
every single
definitely
day.
have to do that.
It's little things like that. And you get more efficient over time. I know that probably doesn't help right now, and it doesn't feel like it right now because you still have everything that you have to do. But I would also say, even with social media, there is a real temptation to be on all the places and all the platforms. And I don't know that there's value to be on all the places and all the platforms, especially if you can't show up and use them as consistently as you need to. And that doesn't just mean posting, that means posting and engaging and just being present. And so sometimes eliminating a couple of those platforms can be a smart strategy as well. My priority platform is LinkedIn. I have content for some of the other sites, and I'm able to repurpose some of my content to share it across other platforms. But my priority is LinkedIn. If I don't get to spend time on Instagram in a week, or if I don't get to spend time on X, or if I don't get to spend time on Threads, I'm over it before it even happened because my priority
Yeah.
platform is LinkedIn. When you break it all down, whether we're talking auditions or we're talking social media or we're talking marketing, we're talking content, all of these different things, when you break it all down, a lot of it comes down to figuring out what is working and what isn't. Prioritize what is working, forget about what isn't, because if you prioritize what is working and you throw the bulk of your efforts towards what is working, then you're not going to miss out on anything by skipping what's not working, right? What would you rather do? Would you rather submit it? You could say, oh, I submitted 100 auditions this week on voices.com. And that sounds great. But wouldn't you rather submit 50 really well thought out, well chosen strategic auditions that were a better match for you? Because if you, at the end of the day, the result is that you book 3 jobs, say, would you rather book 3 from 50 or 3 from 100? Well, I would rather book 3 from 50. Right. So all those other auditions that I submitted didn't matter. They didn't. And then somebody will say, well, but what if the one you booked was in those ones? You can't think that way. You can't fall down that rabbit hole. You got to look at, these are the auditions that are the best fit for me. I'm going to focus on these. I'm going to forget all the other stuff. If you have extra time in your schedule, great. Look at something else. This is a social media platform that works for me. I'm going to throw all of my eggs into this one, and maybe you pick one or two. Those are going to be my priorities for social media. All the other platforms doesn't even matter, because if I do LinkedIn well enough, I will create enough opportunities for myself on LinkedIn that I won't notice whether or not I'm missing anything by not doing Instagram. That's how I think you have to look
Yeah,
at
I
it.
think I want to try some LinkedIn ads.
Yep.
And so I've been kind of working on that and trying to figure out, how I'm going to focus those into who I want them to get to without, breaking the bank. So,
Well, that's the other part of this, which is another episode for another day. And actually, I did an episode. There's a summer series episode on this as well. But the other part of it is then, do I outsource any of this? And that was a question that somebody else asked on the summer series. And so we walked through outsourcing. Kristen Aiken Salata asked that question, and that episode will be out on the summer series. And so, because she was same thing, she's like, look, I got a day job. I got this. I got so many priorities. I got all these things going on. I can't do everything. I know I can't do everything. I got to figure out what I can get somebody else to do. And then we work through that. And so that's the other side of it too, right? If you get to a point where you realize I just cannot do everything, or you just don't want to do
No,
everything, which is
I
also
can't.
fine.
I obviously can't do everything or do it very well. But again, I come from my company culture over the years where I had full-time sales and marketing people. I had somebody, dialing for dollars every day, and we had marketing campaigns, and it wasn't things that I had to personally do. So I miss the people as employees, because most of them were my friends and a lot of them still work for me, but I don't miss having employees, but I miss what they did for me.
Yep.
And Patricia Braley and I think she's one of your Playbook members. She and I were talking about VA for VO and some of those things. So I'll dig into that. And I don't mind doing the marketing and the research. I don't think anybody will do it better than me, but for me to have time to sit there and drill down through those names is a lot of work,
and that may not be something that you have to do, right? And so that's when it comes back to prioritizing.
Yeah, cool.
Right.
Well, so much for our 10-minute call, Mark.
That's all right. Hopefully we got some answers for you anyway. You've got at least a few different strategies that you can lean into to help you sort of limit what you're working on and do things a little bit more efficiently.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate not just what you're doing for me, personally with the Playbook and your camaraderie and your barbecue skills, but I really appreciate the fact that you engage with everybody. And the more I go through Playbook, and I'm not even quite through it yet, but the more I go through Playbook, I'm going, I forgot I needed to do it this way. And but I think you're awesome. And you know what? You give away as much or more than you, I guess, bill for, or whatever, however you want to phrase that. But you really do give back to the community, and you've been a great help for me just to have a sounding board or somebody like today. This means a lot. And this will help my business. And all right, I got to get back to my list.
All right, man. Well, I'm happy to have the conversation, happy to help you where I can. And hopefully this makes you a little bit less overwhelmed and a little bit more efficient.
I'm still overwhelmed, but at least I have ideas, right?
All right, Robert. It's good to talk to you.